Hi everybody, I'm Bree the Plant Lady.
And I'm Ainley Gardner.
And we are checking in with our top 5 plants for the month of November. I can't believe it's November.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You guys, this one is turning 16 in a week.
Yep.
Look out, world. Anyhow, frankly, this year has just passed in a flash, and obviously now we're into the holiday season. But we wanted to give you guys some plants that are looking really outstanding here in Zone 7, Central North Carolina. And of course, our top pick has to be Camellia japonica. And actually just camellias in general. This happens to be Camellia japonica, a variety called Irrational Exuberance. I think that's a fantastic name. But there are also sasanquas that are in bloom and some really great hybrids. So basically, if you live in Zone 7 through 9, you should be growing camellias. They're awesome. Yeah. And if you get the right varieties, you'll actually have them blooming from like late August all the way to May. So if you're not familiar with camellias, in general, you know, these are a broadleaf evergreen. They are large shrubs over time. They actually become small trees. I don't recommend doing heavy pruning on them because you inevitably cut off the flower buds, and that defeats the purpose of growing them. They prefer acidic, well-drained soil. They prefer kind of more shade than sun. So for people with large trees, camellias are actually really useful because they will flower in quite a lot of shade. Oddly enough, they actually do better in winter shade and a little brighter summer exposure because they're actually setting their flower buds on the new growth that flushes in the summertime. So you never do any pruning on camellias in the summer. In fact, if you do have to prune your camellia, you want to do it right after they flower so that you don't cut all that new growth off that would actually be where flower buds set. Fertilizing, they don't need a lot of fertilizer. I usually recommend like the Dr. Earth Organic or Hollytone. And pests and diseases, they don't really have a lot of disease issues, but they do get scale. And scale is something that will show up on the underside of a leaf. Hopefully we don't have any here because I treated all of these last year. But I do have videos that show exactly how to treat scale. Basically, you're going to apply dormant oil to the underside of the leaves to suffocate those insects. And really you want to apply dormant oil kind of now when temperatures are pretty mild. You don't want to apply oil when it's hot out. Overall, once camellias are established, they're very drought tolerant. The one thing is they're sensitive to wet feet, and this is a wet place, really like wet, especially here right on the edge of this woodland swamp. But you see we've got camellias planted all over the place here, and that's because they're planted on mounds. And so if you do live in an area like we do where you have, you know, a high water table, you can kind of get around it just by mounding soil above grade and then planting into a berm, essentially. So, yeah, I highly recommend growing camellias. I know for people living in colder climates, they're not the best option. However, Camellia Forest, where I used to work, they have a lot of varieties that are hardy into Zone 6. So you should check out their website, camforest.com. And you can think about potentially zone bending. And of course, we're just getting started in camellia season. Yeah. So definitely tune in to the weekly garden tours so that you can watch all of the different camellias that I have here as they continuously flower throughout the season. All right, well, now let's give them another awesome plant option for the month of November. All right, our next top choice for November is more about fall color, and it's actually a group of plants. It's deciduous conifers, meaning conifers that are cone bearing that are actually not evergreen. So, you know, most people, when you say conifer, you know, you think of like a Douglas fir, yes, or a Leyland cypress, or a green giant arborvitae. All of those are conifers that actually hold their needles year round. But we're talking about conifers that lose their needles every year on purpose. And one prime example is right here behind us. That beautiful peachy color foliage actually belongs to a plant that was thought to have gone extinct. Metasequoia glyptostroboides. So let me turn the camera around and give you a close-up on this beautiful dawn redwood. So you should totally Google if you're not familiar with the story. Metasequoia is an ancient deciduous conifer that was found, I believe, in the 40s in an isolated valley in China. And cones were found, brought to the United States through Arnold Arboretum, and then distributed, and that is actually how the dawn redwood has made its return into the world, both in natural settings and in landscape settings. And you know, it grows to be an absolutely enormous plant. This one has had its leader cut out by branches falling from the surrounding trees, but I'm so pleased that it's well established, and it really is magnificent at this time of year. The Metasequoia is one of 4 deciduous conifers, and I happen to have 2 other genera that fall into this category that I want to show you. So what we have here is a really awesome plant called the false larch. This is Pseudolarix amabilis. This is another deciduous conifer. This one happened to have already colored up and dropped its needles a few weeks ago. It was absolutely spectacular. It gets butter yellow, really magnificent foliage. And for gardeners in the southeast, Pseudolarix is a better option than the traditional larch, which is more commonly grown in colder regions, and that's because of our climate. We're just a little bit too hot to grow traditional larch, so we grow false larch instead. And it's definitely a plant that I highly recommend. But probably the most famous deciduous conifer that also happens to be native is the bald cypress, Taxodium distichum. And you can see this one that is planted in Aiden's former yard is really a magnificent plant. I think it's the best tree in our entire neighborhood. It has a little bit of a lean. That is courtesy of Hurricane Matthew that hit in 2016. But overall, taxodiums are really low maintenance, very easy to grow. They'll grow in extreme wet, but they're also tolerant of being in dry conditions. When you have them in a space like this where they're not in standing water, they don't actually develop knees. The knees are actually a way for them to provide oxygen to their root system. So when you grow them in a traditional landscape, they don't really produce knees, which is good because the knees can be a little bit dangerous to trip on, or certainly if you're mowing underneath. One of the things that I love most about this tree, but really deciduous conifers in general, is that they're essentially self-mulching, and the needles are really small. So you can see this whole ground is absolutely covered in it. And you know, obviously it's easy enough to go over it with a lawnmower, but it really is sort of ideal mulch. And my goal for this tree is to actually develop a tiny bulb installation underneath it. So gotta carve out an area and get tiny things like galanthus and species tulips and, you know, just kind of super plant nerdy things, cyclamens and stuff established under this tree. And then it won't matter that the needles fall because it's so small it won't impede those tiny bulbs from developing. But again, this is Taxodium distichum, and it's truly a magnificent tree to include in your landscape. And there are a lot of different varieties that are all grafted. This is very difficult to propagate unless you graft it. But there are dwarf ones that I showed you in the recent tour at my parents' garden, a variety called PV Minaret that stays significantly, you know, tighter and is really ideal for smaller landscapes because not every yard can support a gigantic bald cypress. So our next top pick is actually a combination of plants. We wanted to feature a couple of cool season annuals that have done outstandingly well through the month of November. You know, Abby and I planted these the beginning of October, and I had really low expectations. Like I said in the video, well, if it doesn't look good, we'll just redo it. And not only does it look amazing, like I want to start doing these installations everywhere. So let me turn the camera around to show you up close what we're talking about.
It looks really good.
So what we have going on here is some lettuce that was direct seeded. God, this is beautiful. We need to harvest this to make salad. It's just that it's so pretty, I don't want to mess it up. And you can see more lettuce here, really that burgundy leaf with the crimson clover that was direct seeded. I fully expect the crimson clover won't make it through the entire winter, but I don't care. Right now, it's just fulfilling all of my dreams. You can see it's just filling in all the gaps and making it so that, we don't have any weed pressure in this bed. And along with that is the parsley that was actually grown a year ago. This was planted last fall, and it is just strong as can be, and we have been harvesting this and using it in soups and things, and it's just such a beautiful, this is the curly parsley that we grew from seed. And then the background of the grain, which this is barley, and that will just continue to grow taller and then of course flower in the spring. But I have to really give a shout out to this combination: barley, parsley, crimson clover, and lettuce. I really, really am impressed with this combination, and I think you would be too. So our fourth pick, we can't not acknowledge the incredible fall color of our native blueberries. And this is a variety called powder blue. And it's just consistently for more than a decade been a top performer for me in my garden here in Zone 7, Central North Carolina. And it, not only does it have great fall color, but it sets delicious fruit in the summer. And, there's just really no denying that blueberries are a plant that offers 4 seasons of interest. But this really dynamic, brilliant red coloration is something that everyone is attracted to. And, well, I'm very happy to have a large blueberry collection here. And though I have, I think, 16 different varieties, powder blue is hands down the best performer year after year. So it's definitely my #1 pick for a blueberry cultivar. Well, our top pick for the month of November has to be the Chinese allspice, Lindera glauca variety salicifolia. This has had a couple of name changes. I actually think I learned it as Lindera angustifolia. And I've teased you all with this last month in October, and it was just starting to get its fall color. And now you can really see how it's looking as it starts to turn tan. And it's still got the brilliant kind of reddish, yellow, orange tips to its foliage. But what makes this plant so extra is the fact, to get you in here, is the fact that it's tardily deciduous. And that means exactly what you think it should mean. Tardily, meaning late, deciduous, to drop its leaves, means that it holds the leaves all winter long, and they don't actually fall off until the new leaves start to emerge. So it gives you this incredible winter interest because it holds on to the tan foliage. And I could tell you firsthand, on a blustery winter day when these leaves are blowing on the branches, it's truly extraordinary. It's definitely something that provides a level of interest that not every plant provides.
Yep.
Now, there are native species of Lindera, and I'm planning on collecting those and growing them on the property next door where Aiden used to live. This one is from China, and it's done very, very well. You've probably seen this in commercial landscapes. It's really quite popular. One of the more famous recent landscape architects, Michael van Valkenburg. This is kind of his signature plant. So if you've been to Brooklyn Bridge Park, you have inevitably seen this in mass. I pruned mine pretty hard to keep it sort of this size. Dumb place, should have put it somewhere where it could just grow to its full size, but I didn't. So my recommendation is, if you don't want to do any maintenance to this, put it more like on a property border so that you can allow it just to get as tall as it wants. Otherwise, I come through basically once a year and I do some pretty hard cuts to keep it at about 6 foot tall. Otherwise, I think you can count on it being somewhere like 15 to 20 foot. And again, really terrific for winter interest. So definitely something that would be useful for like screening. So you don't want to see like where your neighbors park or where their garbage cans are. Even though this is deciduous, because it holds on to the leaves, it does make it a plant that would actually provide winter screening. Well, everybody, I hope that you will be inspired by our top 5 list for November. And I look forward to sharing the top 5 plants for December. And we will have completed an entire year. So, you know, if you've missed some of the months, you can go back through the playlist and catch up on all the things that we've highlighted over the course of 2022. And hopefully it'll be a useful resource for everybody so
Sure
that,
it will.
you know, you can figure out some interesting plants that you might not already have in your collection. Well, as always, thanks so much for watching, everybody. Please give us a like, share with your friends, and be sure to subscribe to the Breathe the Plant Lady YouTube channel. Happy gardening, everybody.